Hello and welcome to the Business of Data podcast. I'm your host, Catherine King, and it's a pleasure to have you join us today. In this series, we'll be speaking to senior data analytics leaders to share their experiences, challenges, and insights. Let's go ahead and dive straight into today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Business of Data podcast. Today we are going to be talking all about the personalization of data analytics, specifically automotive industry trends around customer experience and how data and analytics is playing a key role in driving business success. Now with me today I have the wonderful Ricardo Rodrigues, who is the Global Pricing Operations and Strategies Manager for Opel. Now, just a bit about Ricardo before we get going. Now, he gained a master's degree in computer science from Denmark's Aalborg University in 2006. After being headhunted by General Motors, Ricardo moved to Germany from Portugal in 2011 and has lived there ever since. He's worked at Opel, or perhaps better known as Vauxhall for our European listeners, for little over than a year and a half. And when he's not at work, you'll often find Ricardo at the local football pitch or at the coast enjoying some surfing. Lovely to have you on the show, Ricardo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the introduction as well.
No worries. It's great to have you. Now, as is a bod pod tradition, I always like to ask a nosy question first. And just in the introduction, I said about, how you like to go to the coast and enjoy some surfing. Have you been able to do that much this year with everything going on?
Sadly, no. I mean, the COVID has caused some limitations on the traveling, and I'm trying to do my best to contribute to this COVID fight. So I have been staying at home, I have to admit. So very likely the next time I go surfing, I might fall a lot. But well, I will catch up easily, hopefully.
I could practice. I love that. But hopefully it won't be too long before we're able to do
True, I hope so too.
Enjoy doing. Awesome. So as I said in the introduction there, we're talking all about personalization of data. I think this is going to be a great conversation, but what I'd love to do is just tee up and set the scene for me, Ricardo. Now, prior to joining Vauxhall's customer experience team, you spent time within the audit team. Can you tell me a bit about the work you did there and how it compares to what you do today?
So first of all, I highly recommend audit as a first job opportunity, because in audit you have the benefit of doing several different projects in several different business units. So you can do in manufacturing, finance, sales. So it really helps you to understand a little bit of the company and then see the big picture. So I think it's a great start for anyone, and I highly recommend that for those who are starting their job or career opportunities. Audit is a very interesting thing. So for those who do data analytics, most of us are interested in clusters and finding reactions and so on and so on. In audit, and we clean the outliers, right? So when we do data modeling, we clean the outliers. In audit is exactly the opposite. So in audit, I'm after the outliers. I'm after the things that are not going into a cluster, because that could mean exceptions that require a special process or means that something went wrong on the process. So it's quite interesting because you do pretty much the same work, but you see the data or the data modeling in a completely opposite way. So it's really interesting, and you also learn a lot.
Fantastic. Now, whilst you were with this team, you actually ended up having plants contact you asking to be audited, which I think we can all say is pretty surprising. It's probably not the most well-loved department, if we're being honest. So I'm keen to know, what on earth drove them to ask to be audited? What value did you manage to unlock for them that previously they just didn't have access to?
So you're fully right. So the audit department typically has this image that, oh, it's the bad guys that come here, just tell me that I'm doing everything wrong. They leave me tons of audit comments and then they leave. So a lot of departments had that perception, and that's why they didn't want to be audited. At General Motors, we followed a different approach. We said, okay, guys, we are going to build some models for you, some data analytics, some reporting, and we come to you to discuss the results of these data analytics. So the plants, they were surprised because they got immediate access to a benchmarking tool where they could see how they were positioning themselves against others, and they could see, oh, I thought I was doing quite well in inventory adjustments, but this other plant is doing way better than me, so maybe I should call them. So by having easy access to a benchmarking tool, by improving the network between the plants, and by giving them one place to go to see all the data combined from finance, from supply chain, from, I don't know, human resources, everything. They said, wow, this really makes my life easier. And Audit came here to discuss very added value things. They came here and saying, hey guys, your cost per vehicle is way higher than anyone else. Let's discuss why. They were so interested in finding why they are not so good as others that they were the first ones to say, hey guys, come here, give me more data, sit next to me, explain me what you did, because it was really added value for them. So it was not that typical audit that you go in and say, out of the 30 documents you forgot to sign one, here's an audit comment. What to say, really? I mean, it's a signature. I mean, now it's really going down to details and helping them. And that's why then word spread, and the plant guy said, well, audit really helped us. And then logistics say, oh, we also need help. So all of a sudden, our CFO, because audit reports to our CFO, was being bombarded with requests for audit. He got shocked, saying, why does everyone want to be audit? What's going on here? And then they explained that audit became more a partner, more someone that goes there to really help us and leaving a tool behind, not just coming and disappearing. And that's why all of a sudden we got so many requests that we said, sorry guys, but we don't have the staff to do all this. But it was a completely different feeling, and we were welcomed. So we were going there and people really saying, please sit, this is my team, 10 people, explain me what you did. So it was a completely different mood and environment that was beneficial for everyone. So I highly recommend the audit departments to go down this approach, because it was a huge victory for everyone.
Yeah, so it's not even just a process change, but like you say, that perception work as well.
Exactly.
You're there to help, not hinder. And I mean, we've spoken about similar topics on the bod pod before, especially with regards to like data governance, where very often as soon as you bring out those sorts of words, people tend to be deflated. They don't want to engage because they just think it's going to be either more work or they're going to get told off for doing something wrong.
Correct.
Actually, most of the time, as you just said with the audit, is actually you want to help them be more efficient.
Correct.
And that actually trying to change that messaging behind is just as important as the processes behind it, which is really interesting. Correct. Now moving on a little bit, now obviously this conversation we're gonna have when we really get into the meats and bones of it is really about, you know, the data behind customer preferences and experiences in the automotive industry. So what I'd love to know is, what would you say the biggest shifts in customer preferences around you know, what car ownership looks like in recent years? Because I know there's an interesting story to say there, especially in comparison to, say, our grandparents' generation as well.
Yes, definitely. So one of the things that has changed the most in the automotive industry is the concept of ownership. I still remember my grandparents, when they wanted to buy a car, for them it was a must that they need to have enough cash to buy the car. If you would tell my grandfather you need to go to a bank and asking for a loan, he would go crazy and say, me adapt, me owning money to someone else, no go. So for them is, I need cash to buy the car. And since they were they were saving for so long to get the cash, they really wanted the car to be theirs. So they really took pride in the car, and they would customize the car if they could afford it. So they really wanted the car to be an image of themselves. Then with my parents' generation, things started to change a little bit. So I remember my father saying, okay, maybe I don't have 100% of the cash I need for the car. I have, I don't know, 50, 60%. The rest I ask a bank. It's still okay because I can afford 40%. So they started to become more open-minded to get some loans, but still the car has to be theirs. My father always said the car has to be in my name. It has to be mine forever. End of story. Which is still good, because again, people would take pride on their cars and would still customize the cars. With my generation, things already start to be a bit different. Now we are not so keen on spending a lot of money upfront, because most of our team don't have that lump sum to spend upfront. So they are more keen on the monthly fee. And actually, I always call that my generation is the monthly fee generation, because we want everything to be paid monthly. We don't want to do anything else. I pay monthly. So we went to a leasing scheme, most of us. And on the leasing scheme, you start to become, okay, the car is still mine, but I know it's only mine for 2 years. So if the car is not exactly what I like, I'm okay with that. It's just for 2 years or 1 year. So if you get an orange car, you say, it's just for 2 years. I can live with an orange car. So you become less picky, and kind of you just get what the best monthly fee will get you. And then we have the kind of the new generation, the brand new generation that says, I don't want to pay for something that I don't use every day. Okay, if I pay a monthly fee, but I don't use the car on weekends, why am I paying the car for the rest of the days? I don't want that. I want to pay if I use. If I don't use, I don't pay. So they are really more into this book and drive or share and drive, whatever, which is a concept then completely different, because if you just book a car for a weekend, honestly, you don't really care about the color of the car. You don't really care about the content of the car. You just want it to be readily available to you, to have the trunk size you need or the number of seats you need. And that's pretty much it. So if you get a gray car, black car for you, it's like, I don't care, it's for a weekend. So it's driving a different trend in our sales department, because people seems to be less caring about how the car looks like and how the car feels like, and more into, I need a car with a lot of trunk. Oh, I need a car with 7 seats. So more functionality. That starts to become what we need to think, that our kids will be more driving into functionality than actually to content.
And I think what's really interesting about this, when we look at it in a kind of micro sense, these people can all be sat around the same dinner table together. It's not like we're talking 100 years ago, then, coming down. The fact that, you can have a grandparent at the end of the table who's very much, as you say, anti-loan, has to own it outright, versus you can have the teenager at the other end of the table who could not even comprehend why that would be such a strong moral. So I think that makes it really interesting when we look at kind of customer experience, that actually these customers are all still here, so you have to kind of then deal with them accordingly. Fantastic. Okie dokie. Let's move into the main kind of idea around data analytics then. So I would love to know what the different elements of your data strategy are, and where does the work your team fit into kind of this bigger picture?
So my current team is more actually in pricing. So we are now developing several data analytics and several business intelligence to help pricing. Because as I said, since the concept of ownership is drastically changing within the generations, so has pricing to be. Pricing now has to be very agile, right? Because if you want to buy the car, I think the price is pretty much fixed. But for example, if you want to lease the car, then we have to think about residual values. We have to think about how easy it will be then to sell the used vehicle. And if you want to go down to this book and drive, you need to think about these daily rates or weekly rates, and how competitive is other brands. So it forces us to have very agile pricing, what we call also smart pricing, which means that we need a lot of data, a lot of competitor data, a lot of customer data to put all that into a nice cake and say, okay, for this younger generation, based on market trends, based on competitor trends, we need to have this type of pricing. For the grandparent generation who are more cash oriented, we need this, perhaps a one-time promotion, whatever. So we really need to have now pricing strategies according with the customer cluster you want to offer a certain product. And this means that you have to be very fast in pricing, which before we were not, because I mean, you would not change the price of a vehicle that often. Now, not of the vehicle itself, but of the service we are providing, has to change quite fast. And then that's where my team is, to make sure that we provide all the data needed for the pricing analyst to make a decision in 1-2 days, and for that decision to become effective in a matter of days and not a matter of weeks or months as before.
Absolutely. So I suppose my next question to you then really ought to be, how do you do it? What tools and technologies have you put in place to forecast such changing customer demand, price products, and to basically effectively ensure that you meet those customer needs? And especially kind of the added context of this conversation happening right now is obviously COVID, and the fact that the environment has just changed and will continue to change as well. How have you been doing that practically?
So before I answer exactly your question, I would just like to give some advice to whoever is listening. More important than tools is data governance, and you touched that a while ago. You can have the best tools in the world, but if your data is not aligned to your needs, those tools cannot do miracles. So the everyone is to spend some time on your data governance, make sure that you get the right data that you need for your business needs, that the data is available on a platform that is easy to work with. Because if you achieve that, I would say 70% or even more of your work is done. Then to do data modeling and analytics, pretty much any data scientist nowadays can do that. We use NIME. It's an open source data analytics tool, quite powerful. And especially knowing that it's open source, the community is great. They really help. And you can do a lot of things in one platform. You can read from Oracle, SQL, you can do Python, you can do R, you can do MATLAB, whatever you wish. So it's quite interesting to merge all those technologies in one platform. And then we chose R because the background of my team is R, and we decided to continue on that statistical language. But Python is also very famous. We have a couple of things in Python. But as I said, I'm not so focused on the tools and technologies because there are so many options nowadays that you can choose whatever fancies your budget and your likes. But having the right data, that is the key thing. And that's where I would recommend everyone to spend more time there and less time on the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a previous Bob Pod episode. I was lucky enough to have Laura Han join me, and we actually said it's almost like there's a sexy scale, and tools and technologies are always high up. Everyone wants to talk about them. Correct. And actually, you've got to go further down that scale and get the governance and the data quality in line to do the great things that you want to do. So let's have a bit of a chat about this customer experience then. What are the trends that you're seeing currently in terms of how people want to engage with you?
Now we are seeing people more keen on having a smart product offer. People don't want to go online and to be configuring the car step by step, saying what engine do you want, what trim do you want, what transmission do you want, because first of all, it sometimes becomes technical and people don't like technical jargon. And people sometimes don't understand the difference between a 3-cylinder engine and a 4-cylinder engine, and they are not supposed to. I mean, so people now are more like, okay, my personality, I prefer that you ask about myself. Like, am I a sporty guy? Am I a techie guy? Am I a comfortable guy? And then based on that, give me a product suggestion. Yeah. And that's the path we are going. So if you are a sporty person, then perhaps we suggest you a car with a more powerful engine, with some nice racing stickers, whatever. If you are a techie person, then I say you need to have the infotainment system that can connect to Android or iOS, so on and so on. So instead of kind of sending the person immediately to a configurator and say, now survive, we say, no, tell me a bit about yourself, and then I propose something to you. So it saves a lot of time. And typically what we offer seems to be already more aligned with what they want. They can still do minor adjustments, obviously, but we skip all that technical part that honestly people don't have the time, neither the patience to investigate, to Google, 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder, yeah, then perhaps a 4-cylinder, not anymore.
I think what's so interesting about this industry is that you've almost gone to hyper personalization and come back, whereas a lot of industries are still going towards hyper personalization and making sure that they know everything. 360 view of the customer is kind of the buzzword, isn't it? And it's so interesting because I think of Ford, and you can have any color that you want as long as it's black. And then I think of only a couple of years ago, I remember sitting down with my uncle and he was playing around with this. It was like a car thing where you could personalize the whole thing. It looked hideous by the end of it because it had orange things, purple things, and all sorts. But as you say, people don't want to be spending time doing that and actually providing those questions that actually do lead to answers, like you say, about, are you a sporty person? Then chances are you're going to want something that looks a little different to someone who, is a family man and wants comfort. So what does that look like in the back end in terms of the data analytics to provide those customers with those hyper personalized experiences without them having to tick 30 pages of boxes that say, I want it this color and that color?
So now we are doing spending a lot of effort and to have a better system in place called the customer experience system, where we are trying to get more data out of the customer. First, of course, due to GDPR rules, we explain everything to the customer, why we are collecting this, etc., etc. But the idea is to collect some meaningful information, not intrusive. We don't want to know everything you do on a daily basis, not at all. We just want to know some high-level characteristics of your personality. And that's what we are trying to do so that, sometimes we just don't even store that information. You just log into the browser and then the browser asks itself and then it generates the recommendation. But to be honest, to build the data models behind that will generate the product, we kind of need to know, at least for a significant part of our customers, that data.
Yeah.
If I don't know that sporty customers usually tend to go for red cars, then I cannot suggest you a red car because I don't know that. So we are trying to get more and more details about our customers, which is also a change in the automotive industry. In the past, we'd sell the cars to the dealers and say, now it's your problem to sell the cars.
Yeah.
And now it's different. Now we really want to help the dealers and say, hey, look, I know that there is a lot of guys wanting a red car, so let's build a lot of red cars. So that's what is changing right now. So we are helping the dealers to get customer data, work with the customer data, and then suggest the best product offers for the customers that are within that dealership area. And that's where we are spending a lot of time. It's not easy because you do need a lot of data. And people, especially nowadays, are very sensitive about sharing data because a lot of cases that happened in the past. So it's as long as we are transparent, and we are, and the customer sees the added value of that, I think they are willing to share the data. But if the customer says, no, sorry, I mean, you are just bombarding me with nonsense marketing, then I will not give you my data. And that's why we are also stopping that. So in the past, Opel would send, I don't know, weekly emails about product offers, and people would get fed up with, especially because if you're a family guy and you get a notification of a Corsa, say, why are you giving me things about a Corsa? So now we stop that. We really want to make sure that if you get a marketing offer, is because it's really tailored to you, to make it meaningful. That's what we are fighting for.
Fantastic. And I think if there's one kind of word to sum up this conversation so far, it is just transformation. Everything we've spoken about there has been some level of transformation and change. Correct. And I suppose, I mean, it wouldn't be a 2020 podcast episode without me breaking out the C word. I know I've already done it, but how has COVID really impacted the work that you do and kind of data analytics as a whole for the industry?
Interesting things. And I told you that the concept of ownership is changing and people don't want to own a car. But now with COVID, people are also afraid of sharing cars because they are afraid that, well, I'm picking up a car that I don't know the person who picked the car yesterday, so maybe the car was not cleaned, whatever. So now people are also rethinking and say, well, okay, maybe I don't want to own the car forever, but maybe I go back to the leasing process where I own the car for 1-2 years. So we start seeing some people changing from this concept of not wanting a car to start wanting a car that is only for them. And also, the COVID really hit hard on people's finances. So we are launching a couple of offers where we give extra insurance in case you lose your job or in case you lose your income, the insurance will step in. So we kind of give that as a promotion. Because yes, now people are less willing to spend money on a car than they were before because they are afraid that their jobs or their economic situation could drastically change in the near future. So sales have gone down expectedly. But I think, with these insurance offers and with other offers we have in place, we might be able to compensate that. But and now the fact that people want to own a car helping us to sell more. But yes, it did have a huge impact on us.
Absolutely. So thinking ahead to 2021, bearing in mind that we are towards the end of this year now, what are you hoping to kind of see in the future? What innovations are on the horizon for you and your team?
So we are working hard on almost providing real-time analysis so that, for example, our pricing analysts, they pretty much, I will not say 100% real time because that's almost impossible, but they have very recent data and very recent market trends and very recent customer trends so that when they make a pricing decision, they know and they feel comfortable that they are using the latest and greatest information available. So we are really trying to become very agile, very efficient, very on-time analysis. But might take more than 12 months, but that's the path. That information will be that the right information will be readily available for the business needs. That's our goal.
Fantastic. Well, Ricardo, it has been wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time. And I think if we end on one final question, then is, I know you mentioned kind of your key message to the audience about data governance, but if you could pick one further message to say to the audience as a parting note, what would that be?
I would say be smart and be creative. That's what data scientists and data community have to be nowadays, to do a lot more with less and to think outside of the box, because you have to be unique to stand out. Doing what others are doing will not make a big difference.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ricardo. And I'll speak to you real soon.
My pleasure. Have a nice day. Bye, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
What a absolutely fantastic conversation. What I loved is the journey that Ricardo took us on from our grandparents' era through to the newest generation, and how they really prefer this pay-for-play system of engaging in the automotive industry. I think what's really interesting there is what Ricardo picks up on with GDPR and the issues around customers not necessarily wanting to give over as much data as they did before, because there's that heightened awareness to actually how precious that information can be. But as Ricardo has said, the more data they get their hands on, the better experience the customers are more likely to get in terms of that personalization work. Really, really interesting stuff. Now, as always, make sure you're subscribed to the Business of Data platform to be first in line for our thought-leading content and insights. And if you're not already, make sure you're following us on our LinkedIn social page as well, where we would love to see you commenting your thoughts on our content. For now, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you real soon.